Hi, it's Robin. So this video is probably going to be relatively short compared to my other videos because I've just been pretty tired these past couple weeks and not super motivated, unfortunately, but I still want to make sure that I'm getting my videos out. And I did see the drama, and so I had some thoughts about that. And my thoughts are kind of half-baked, but I'm just interested to see what other people think. So we can just get into it. So on the non-spoiler side of things, I definitely am starting to see a trend in like the editing and cinematography of these movies that have been coming out recently. So a lot of like seemingly natural lighting and like kind of grainy footage, partly, maybe in post, maybe just like the film that they're using, as well as like jump cuts and just interesting editing and just very focused on making the editing non-conventional in a way, and you can definitely see that in the beginning. I really love that beginning sequence of the drama. I think in general it really encompasses why it's such an interesting romance. It's very unconventional, which is defines their entire relationship, Charlie and Emma. And so yeah, just that, like, the first introduction to the couple, I think, perfectly frames the rest of the movie. In general, the movie is super suspenseful, but not in the typical way that a romance is. And, I think that comes with most A24 movies, which I did like that. It was very strange. I think throughout the whole thing, I didn't know how to feel about the conversation topic, but it was an interesting choice. Definitely not something I would have thought would be in a romance movie. So yeah. At the beginning, I did think it was really funny that they casted Robert Pattinson as Zendaya's British boyfriend and not Tom Holland. But in hindsight, I think I completely understand it now because, she's very private about her relationship, and there's, some intimate scenes where you would want to keep that part of your relationship private. So yeah, there's some intimate scenes, not just like spicy intimacy, but just like vulnerabilities that I can imagine you wouldn't want to be on screen with your actual boyfriend in front of millions of people. So but that it was kind of funny to me because especially with like challengers and all these other things coming out, it's just like there's so many people talking about like Tom must be upset about it, but it's acting, and I think both Robert and Zendaya did a fantastic job. Hot take, I think Robert Pattinson might low-key be one of the greatest actors of our generation. Just his range is incredible. Seeing him like Mickey 17, The Boy and the Heron, he's been in just so many things, but they all have been very different roles. So he's been great. I think Zendaya did play a character that she typically plays, but of course, like, she's so good at it and it felt natural. So like I said, short video because I really don't know what else to say that's spoilery. And I think, the most important parts are the spoils, so we can get into the spoiler part. Essentially the entire conflict is that while drunk at like their wedding dinner tasting party, Zendaya reveals that she planned a school shooting when she was 15, and so that causes the drama. I think in general it's a pretty interesting topic, especially given that Robert Pattinson's character Charlie is British, and I think especially like sitting in a movie theater in America, it's like when he brings up that you don't know who has thought about committing such a heinous act. It could be anyone. It could be people that like maybe people thought about it and they changed their thinking about it, and you really don't know. And someone who's like Zendaya's character, who is conventionally attractive, who seems unassuming, did something like that. I think that is such an interesting dynamic of sitting in a movie theater and experiencing that and being like, is the person next to me planning something like that? Or do they know what this movie's about? And they're like, that was interesting. But there has been some controversy about whether or not there needed to be a spoiler warning before there, because I do I had no idea. I went in blind. I had no idea what the movie was about other than it had Robert Pattinson and Zendaya in it. And so I think that's an interesting topic. I wonder if it was by choice. I feel like it's not responsible for me to kind of talk about that, in the sense I haven't really thought enough about it. But that is something that I wanted to bring up, and whether or not you know, do you have to give spoiler warnings for, or not spoiler warnings, but give, you know, sensitivity warnings or trigger warnings for movies? Right, like they have ratings, and is that enough? I don't know. That is not the only controversy around this movie, unfortunately. So the scenes where Charlie, older Charlie, is kind of with Zendaya's character Emma, did feel really gross, and I can understand from a writing perspective. It's supposed to be like, oh, he's struggling with, you know, figuring out whether or not he wants to marry her because he's seeing only her 15-year-old self, who was the one that planned the shooting. But then, given the context of, it's not even a controversy, it's just like gross, given the context of the, you know, director and him stating that he dated a 16-year-old girl, it's like, after that, after learning about that, I was like, those scenes are definitely, I definitely conceptualized those in a completely different way, and was like, are you just saying, is this just your way of saying that, like, oh, like I had to stop a 15-year-old from committing a mass murder? Like, I don't know. Those scenes just, it was maybe a little tone deaf and a little gross and a little icky. And then I also really worry that the movie is about cancel culture in a way, because although I might agree, like, hey, anyone could be planning something like this, and like, okay, is Emma changed? That was 15 years ago. In the context of what the director has done, I'm like, are you trying to tell people that you're a changed person, and therefore, you know, we need to think about what type of acts are actually irredeemable and what, like, people can change? And I don't know. I don't know if that's what he's trying to say, right? Because during that scene, everyone goes around the table and tells each other what the worst thing they've done is. And essentially we learn that Rachel, Charlie's friend's Mike's wife, basically locked a mentally disabled person in a RV closet for like an entire day. Essentially we learn that every character has done something that's pretty fucked up, and even like Charlie himself, by a lot of the things that he does in the film, reveals that he's also pretty fucked up. But Emma's the only one being demonized for the stuff that she's doing, and so, even though it was like 15 years ago. And so yeah, I just really worry that that's the director saying like, hey, it was a long time ago, like, don't look at me anymore, you messed up, you know, which makes the movie even grosser if that's the case. Like, again, I do think it's a really interesting idea to play around with, of like, at what point does a good person become a bad person? At what point does a bad person become a good person? And like, does it depend on the intentions, on what caused them to be good, etc.? It's kind of like Theseus's good person. But again, given who made the movie, it's a weird take, I think. Speaking of Emma being the only one that's demonized, I do definitely see a interracial undertone that I also can't really put my finger on, other than the obvious comment where Rachel is saying that like Mike grew up around guns and is assuming that, you know, and it's implied that she's assuming that because he's black and she's white and just doesn't understand, you know, his culture and how he grew up. So she just assumes it was around guns. But and like Zendaya, Charlie and Emma are also an interracial couple, and even an intercultural couple, where Charlie is like assuming that Americans just always are around guns and like it's a cultural problem. And I see that there's connections being made, and I don't understand what exactly is trying to be said in that area. Yeah, I think my media literacy just like went out the window when I was watching this, and I was trying to watch it like to genuinely enjoy it as well. Yeah, I'm a lot confused in some areas, and what I'm feeling about it is not good. It feels a little icky, and inherently it feels icky because the art is made by a gross artist. So anyways, that's my thoughts. Those are my thoughts. If you like the video, let me know what you think, and yeah, subscribe if you want to see more movie reviews and little things in my life. Okay, bye.